The banners of the direwolf snapped hard in the wind as they rose above the blackened walls of King's Landing. Smoke still drifted through the streets, carrying the bitter smell of burned wood, blood, and fear. For the first time in living memory, the city had fallen not to a dragon, not to wildfire, but to a young wolf from the cold north. Robb Stark stood at the Lion Gate, his boots stained red, his sword hanging heavy at his side. He was only a boy of 16, yet the weight of a broken kingdom pressed on his shoulders like armor made of stone. The people watched him in silence. Some knelt, others stared with hollow eyes, unsure whether this new king would be savior or executioner. Robb did not smile. Victory had not come cleanly. It never did. His army had paid for every step through the city with northern blood. Men he had eaten with, laughed with, died screaming beneath Lannister arrows. This was not the victory songs spoke of. The battle itself had been fast and cruel. Tywin Lannister had been trapped in the west, Stannis delayed by storms, and the gold cloaks had folded quicker than anyone expected. When the gates fell, the city broke. Lannister soldiers threw down their swords and begged. Others fought until the streets ran red. Robb had ordered mercy where possible, but mercy was a weak thing once fear took control. The North remembered Ned Stark's head on a spike. Some debts were paid in steel. Cersei Lannister was gone. Some said she drank poison. Others whispered she escaped through the tunnels beneath the Red Keep with Tommen clutched to her chest. Joffrey, though, had not been so lucky. They found him in the throne room, shaking, a boy king dressed in gold with no men left to protect him. Robb had looked at him for a long time. This was the monster who ordered his father's death. This was the face behind the war. "Take him," Robb finally said, his voice flat. No anger, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. When Robb entered the Red Keep, the silence was worse than the battle. The halls echoed with ghosts. This was where his father had walked, trusting honor in a place that fed on lies. Every step felt wrong. When he reached the Iron Throne, twisted and sharp as a mockery of power, he stopped. The seat looked smaller than stories made it sound, ugly, cruel, built to hurt those who ruled. He did not sit. Not yet. The lords of the North gathered behind him, Great Jon Umber, face split in a bloody grin, Roose Bolton, pale eyes unreadable. Catelyn Stark stood closest, her face tight with fear she could not hide. She had lost one son already. She could feel the gods circling another. "This city will choke you," she whispered, when no one else was close enough to hear. "It killed your father. It will try to kill you." Robb nodded. He knew. Every stone here hated him. The South did not love wolves. They feared them, and fear turned quickly into knives in the dark. Outside, the bells rang. Not in celebration, but surrender. A broken sound for a broken city. The people needed a king now, whether they wanted one or not. Robb understood something then that no battle had taught him. Winning a war was simple. Holding the peace would be hell. That night, as torches burned along the walls and Stark banners replaced lions, Robb stared out over the city from the Red Keep balcony. Somewhere below, a woman cried. Somewhere else, a man prayed for a king who would not starve him. The North had come too far to turn back now. Robb Stark had taken King's Landing, and the realm would never forgive him for it. The morning after the city fell did not feel like victory. Robb woke before dawn in a bed that was too soft, surrounded by walls that did not know him. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he smelled it again, smoke, sweat, old stone, and something sour beneath it all. King's Landing. The city that had taken his father and dared him to survive it. He dressed without help. Grey wind was not allowed inside the Red Keep, and Robb felt that loss more sharply than he expected. The wolf had always been there after battles, silent and steady, reminding him who he was. Here, Robb felt smaller, like a boy wearing a crown meant for cruel men. The court assembled quickly. Southern lords arrived dressed in silk and fear, kneeling low, their words sweet and hollow. They swore loyalty with mouths that had praised the Lannisters only days ago. Robb listened, nodded, and gave nothing away. He had learned fast that honor alone did not rule kingdoms. It only buried good men. Some asked him to take the Iron Throne at once. Others urged him to wait, to call a council, to negotiate with remaining claimants. The names were spoken carefully: Stannis, Renly's shadow, distant Targaryen rumors whispered like curses. Robb let them speak until they were done. "I did not come south to play king," he said finally. His voice carried farther than he expected. The room stilled. "I came for justice, for my father, for the North." The silence that followed was uneasy. Justice was a dangerous word, too sharp, too honest. That afternoon, he ordered the dungeons opened. Prisoners were brought up in chains: Lannister men, gold cloaks, spies, merchants who had funded the wrong side. Each face told a different lie. Some begged, some glared. A few stayed silent, broken already. Robb felt every eye on him, waiting to see if the wolf would bare his teeth. When the man who had overseen Ned Stark's execution was dragged forward, the court leaned in. This was what they wanted. Blood. A show. Robb looked at the man for a long moment. He remembered standing in the crowd, helpless, watching his father die for trusting the wrong people. "Name?" Robb asked. The man stuttered it out. "Did you give the order?" "Yes," the man whispered. "I was told." Robb drew his sword and ended it with one clean strike. No speech, no anger, just an ending. The court exhaled as one. Some were satisfied, others disappointed it was so quick. Word spread through the city like fire. The Wolf King dealt death himself. Some cheered, others locked their doors tighter. Fear kept order better than love, and Robb hated that he understood this now. That night, his mother confronted him again. She spoke of alliances, of marriages, of promises made and broken. The phrase, the Riverlands, the cost of standing alone. Robb listened, jaw tight. He loved her, but every path she offered felt like another chain. "I won't trade one cage for another," he said. "Not again." Catelyn saw the boy beneath the crown then, and it frightened her more than any enemy. Boys could be broken. Boys made mistakes. Beyond the walls, ravens flew. One brought word that Tywin Lannister was marching east with fire and vengeance. Another warned that Stannis had declared Robb a traitor and usurper. The realm was not bowing. It was sharpening itself. Robb stood on the battlements as the sun set, watching the city glow red and gold. He had taken the heart of the Seven Kingdoms, but hearts bled when cut. He could feel the knives forming already in whispers, in smiles, in oaths that sounded too eager. The North wanted a king of their own. The South wanted a ruler they could control. Robb wanted something simpler and far harder, a world where honor did not get men killed. As darkness fell, torches lit the streets, and King's Landing held its breath. The wolf had claimed the lion's den, but every beast in the realm was watching now, waiting to see if he would rule or be torn apart. The first betrayal did not come with steel, it came with smiles. Robb learned quickly that King's Landing did not attack you from the front. It circled, whispered, waited. Lords who knelt in the morning argued by afternoon. Councils stretched for hours, every word wrapped in courtesy and poison. They spoke of grain stores, coin shortages, and order, but beneath it all was the same question none dared ask aloud: how long would the wolf last? Food became the first real enemy. The city had always been bloated, living off trade and threat, and the war had choked both. Bread riots broke out in Flea Bottom within days. Northern soldiers tried to keep the peace, but they were strangers here, men with accents and cold eyes. Every shove turned into a fight. Every fight turned into another reason for the city to hate them. Robb walked among the streets against his guards' wishes. He needed to see it himself. Starving children did not care who sat the throne. Old men cursed him as quietly as they once cursed Joffrey. A woman spat at his feet and screamed that all kings were the same. Robb did not stop her. He had no answer that would fill her stomach. That night, a knife found its way into his chambers. It was clumsy, driven by desperation rather than skill. A young man, no older than Robb himself, lunged from behind a curtain. Grey wind was not there to tear him apart. One of Robb's guards took the blade instead, blood soaking the carpets of a room meant for feasts and pleasure. The assassin was dragged away, sobbing, screaming about hunger and lost brothers. Robb sat alone afterward, staring at the bloodstain that servants could not scrub away. This was the throne's true color, not gold, red. Roose Bolton arrived the next day with reinforcements and cold congratulations. He spoke softly, praised Robb's strength, his wisdom, his destiny. Robb listened, uneasy. Bolton's eyes missed nothing, and they never warmed. When Roose suggested harsher punishments to teach the city obedience, Robb refused. The look he received in return was polite and calculating. Ravens brought worse news. The Riverlands were burning again. Allies questioned their oaths. The Freys demanded what they were promised. Every decision Robb had delayed now demanded payment with interest. Catelyn begged him to compromise, to marry, to bargain, to bend just enough to survive. Robb snapped back harder than he meant to, and the hurt in her eyes stayed with him longer than any wound. "I didn't cross half the realm to become another tyrant," he said. "But you may become a dead one," she replied quietly. The city began to test him. Rumors spread that the North meant to sack King's Landing, to take children as hostages, to burn septs. None of it was true, but truth mattered little once fear took hold. Someone was feeding those lies, carefully, skillfully. Robb realized then that taking the city had been the easy part. The real war had only just begun, and it would not be fought with swords alone. He stood again on the battlements, watching the lights flicker below. Somewhere in that maze of streets were men already planning his fall. Somewhere, allies were deciding whether he was worth backing or betraying. Robb Stark had the Iron Throne within his grasp, but the throne was already trying to kill him. The city chose a side when winter ships failed to arrive. The grain that was meant to come from the Reach never reached Blackwater Bay. Some said storms took it, others whispered sabotage. Robb knew better. Someone was squeezing him, testing how he would respond when the city began to starve. Hunger was louder than loyalty, and King's Landing was already screaming. Bread riots turned violent. Northern patrols were ambushed in alleyways. Gold cloaks who had sworn to Robb vanished at night and reappeared wearing different colors by morning. The city was slipping through his fingers, grain by grain. Robb called a council and made his choice. He opened the royal storehouses. The lords protested immediately. They warned him about reserves, about winter, about leverage. Robb silenced them with a single look. "My father died because he chose what was right instead of what was safe," he said. "I won't let this city burn so men like you can feel clever." The people noticed. For the first time since the conquest, cheers followed the direwolf banners. Not love, never love, but something close to hope. It scared the lords more than fear ever had. A fed city was harder to control. That same night, Roose Bolton hosted a quiet dinner for several southern nobles. Robb was not invited. Catelyn warned him again. "They are isolating you," she said. "They always do this before they strike." Robb nodded, but his attention was elsewhere. Reports had come in that Tywin Lannister was closer than expected. Not marching openly, raiding, burning supply lines, bleeding Robb slowly, the way a butcher softened meat. The Wolf King rode out before dawn, not in armor, not with banners, but fast and light. He met Tywin's forces in the Riverlands, not with brute force, but traps and misdirection, northern tactics, woods, night, cold patience. Lannister men died confused and afraid, never knowing where the wolf was until it was too late. When Robb returned to King's Landing days later, victory followed him like a shadow. Songs spread faster than ravens. The boy king who beat the lion in his own den. The city buzzed. Hope flared again. That was when the second betrayal came. A letter. A simple thing. A seal Robb recognized instantly. The phrase. They were withdrawing support. No accusations, no anger, just cold distance. Doors closing, bridges burning quietly. Robb crushed the parchment in his fist. He had known this would come. He had just hoped to delay it longer. That night, an attempt was made on Catelyn's life. She survived by chance alone. The assassin fled into the tunnels beneath the Red Keep, vanishing like smoke. Robb stood by his mother's bed afterward, rage shaking his hands. This was no starving boy with a knife. This was a message. You don't belong here. Robb finally sat on the Iron Throne the next morning. The steel cut into him. He welcomed it. Pain kept him sharp. I will not rule through fear alone, he told the court. But make no mistake, I will rule. Executions followed, quiet ones, precise ones. Men who plotted in shadows disappeared. Gold cloaks were replaced. Loyal northerners took positions that mattered. The city felt it shift, like a beast, realizing its new master would not be shaken off easily. Still, Robb knew the truth. Every choice he made carved away a piece of the boy he had been. Honor bent, mercy narrowed, the throne demanded payment, and it never accepted coin. As winter winds began to creep south, Robb Stark understood something his father never had time to learn. Winning wasn't enough. To keep King's Landing, he would have to become something the realm feared just enough to obey and just enough to hate. Winter arrived without asking permission. It crept into King's Landing through cracked stone and narrow streets, settling into bones and tempers alike. The sea turned grey and violent. Fires burned day and night, and still people shivered. Hunger returned, quieter now but more dangerous, like a wound that never healed. The city blamed Robb for the cold as easily as it once blamed Joffrey for cruelty. Kings were convenient targets. Robb changed with the season. He slept less, ate little. His face grew harder, his words fewer. He listened more than he spoke, and when he spoke, people listened. The boy who once laughed with his men was fading, replaced by a ruler shaped by stone walls and whispered threats. Some of his lords called it growth, others called it the beginning of tyranny. News came that Stannis Baratheon had landed in the Stormlands and was marching, claiming the throne in the name of law and blood. Unlike the Lannisters, Stannis would not bargain. He would burn the city to prove a point. Robb felt a strange respect for that kind of honesty and a deep fear. He ordered the defences reinforced. Fleets chained the Blackwater. Northern archers lined the walls. For the first time, King's Landing prepared to be besieged by a king who believed he had every right to take it. The people panicked. Robb walked among them again, hood drawn low. He heard prayers to gods who had already failed them. He heard curses spoken in his name. He heard hope too, fragile and stubborn, carried by those who remembered full bellies and open storehouses. A child recognized him and bowed. Robb almost broke. That night, Catelyn confronted him for the last time. "You are losing yourself," she said. "This throne will take everything if you let it." Robb met her gaze. "It already has." The battle came at dawn. Stannis attacked with fire and discipline. His men advanced like a machine, shields locked, faith burning brighter than torches. The Blackwater ran dark with blood, but no wildfire saved the city this time. Only strategy, sacrifice, and bodies stacked so high men slipped on them. Robb fought where the line nearly broke. Northern men rallied around him, shouting his name, not as a lord, not as a symbol, but as one of their own. The city watched from the walls, silent, as the Wolf King bled for them. By nightfall, Stannis was gone. Defeated. Not destroyed, but broken enough to retreat. King's Landing stood. The cheers were real this time. Not loud, not joyful, but grateful. The city had been spared, and Robb had paid the price in flesh and blood. He stood on the walls afterward, staring into the dark, knowing this victory would echo through the realm. But victory did not bring peace. Roose Bolton vanished that same night. No body, no farewell, just absence. Robb knew what that meant. Somewhere, another war was already forming. The throne cut into his back as he sat in silence, alone. He did not move away from the pain. He welcomed it. Pain reminded him he was still alive, still fighting, still holding the realm together by will alone. Robb Stark had saved King's Landing. Now he would have to survive his own allies. Roose Bolton's absence poisoned the air more than any open rebellion could have. Robb felt it in the way men avoided his eyes, in the way conversation stopped when he entered a room. Silence had become a weapon, and it was being used well. Ravens went unanswered. Scouts vanished. Entire villages in the Riverlands stopped sending word altogether. It was not chaos. It was planning. Then the bodies started appearing. Not in the city. Outside it. Northern men found hanging from trees along the King's Road, their cloaks stripped, their throats cut clean. No banners, no claims, just messages written in blood and snow. Robb stood over one such body at dawn, frost clinging to the man's beard, and felt something inside him finally crack. This was not war. This was punishment. The council urged caution, wait, fortify, negotiate. Robb dismissed them all. He had learned something the South never understood. Hesitation fed wolves, but it fed traitors even more. He rode north with a small force, leaving King's Landing in uneasy calm. Catelyn begged him not to go. The city needed him. The throne needed him. Robb answered with a truth that scared them both. "If I don't end this," he said, "it will never end." The Riverlands greeted him with burned farms and empty roads. Winter had sharpened every cruelty. Robb moved fast, striking Bolton loyalists before they could melt away. Castles fell without sieges. Men switched sides quickly when faced with the wolf in the flesh instead of rumors. Fear worked. Robb hated that it did, but he used it. They found Bolton at last in the ruins of a keep abandoned decades ago. No grand battle, no speeches, just snow, stone, and men who knew they were already dead. Bolton did not beg. "You were never meant for the throne," he said calmly, even as Robb's sword rested at his neck. "The realm eats boys like you." Robb looked at him for a long time. "So does the North," he replied and ended it. When Robb returned south, the realm had shifted. News of Bolton's death spread like wildfire. Some lords trembled. Others pledged loyalty with sudden enthusiasm. The message was clear now. Robb Stark was not a symbol to be manipulated. He was not a boy king waiting to fall. He was a ruler who hunted betrayal to its source. King's Landing received him differently this time. The people bowed lower. The whispers softened. The city had learned something simple and terrifying. This king did not forgive twice. Winter deepened. War slowed. For the first time since crossing the neck, Robb felt the realm pause, not at peace, never peace, but balance. Late one night, Robb stood alone on the walls, watching snow fall over the city he had never wanted. He thought of the North, of home, of who he might have been if honor had been enough. The Iron Throne waited behind him, cold and patient. Robb turned back toward it. He would rule, not because he wanted to, but because if he didn't, worse men would. The realm had taken everything from him. Now it would have to live with what it created. Spring came late, weak and uncertain, like the realm itself. The snow melted into mud, carrying the remains of winter with it, broken carts, shallow graves, memories better left buried. King's Landing breathed again. Markets reopened. Ships returned. Life crept forward, careful not to draw too much attention, as if the city feared reminding the king it still existed. Robb watched it all from a distance. He ruled now with a quiet certainty. No grand feasts, no empty promises. Laws were spoken plainly and enforced the same way. Some called him cold, others called him fair. Both were right. The throne had carved the softness out of him piece by piece, until only what was necessary remained. Ravens brought news from across the realm. No major rebellions, no banners raised, just tension, held tight, like a drawn bow. The Seven Kingdoms were not united, but they were tired, and tired realms obey. One evening, Robb walked the throne room alone. The hall was empty, lit only by dying torches. He traced the scars along the Iron Throne with his eyes, thinking of the kings who had sat there before him. Madmen, monsters, children pretending to be gods. He finally understood them. Power did not corrupt. It revealed. Catelyn came to him before dawn. She looked older now, grief etched deep, but her eyes were calmer than they had been in years. "The North is stable," she said. "They speak your name with pride again." Robb nodded. He had wondered if that day would ever come. "Will you go home?" she asked. He thought about it. About snow-covered forests, about a castle that still remembered him as a son instead of a king. The answer hurt. "No," he said. "Not yet." Somewhere in the city, bells rang not for surrender, not for war, but for mourning. Robb rose and took his place on the throne. The steel bit into him, as it always did. He did not flinch. This was his punishment. This was his duty. Robb Stark had taken King's Landing and lived. The realm would remember him not as the boy who wanted justice, but as the king who endured what justice cost.